What do you want to be when you grow up? This was a bit unexpected, wasn't it? For many of us, irrespective of age, this can be a rather difficult question to answer. My name is Monica. I'm 27 years old and I'm a lawyer. Now I know this sounds rather conventional, but there is a catch. As a lawyer, I focus on a fascinating, challenging, and new field of law I call cultural intellectual property law. This makes me the only one in Romania and one of maybe 2% of the worldwide supply of lawyers that focus on issues related to this field. I don't have a set-in-stone answer for what I want to be when I grow up, but I know what I want to grow up doing. And this is what I came to share. How my passion for traditional textiles and design has led to a mission of building bridges between the fashion industry and traditional creative communities. In 2015, while collaborating with a reputed law firm in Bucharest, I started to seriously question the direction of my career path. The field of law that always attracted me was intellectual property law. You know, patents, copyright, trademarks, registered design. But there was also fashion, an industry I had long been attracted to, both as a consumer and as a professional. From conception of design, production, supply chain, distribution, marketing strategies, or employment, the fashion business is a prodigious source of legal challenges. To figure things out, I went to spend some time with my grandmother. I wanted to find out more about our family history, hoping that in the process I would find clarity as to which direction to take professionally. This always works out well in the movies, and somehow it worked out well for me too. Every time I go to visit my grandmother, we open the treasure chest. This is a big, old, wooden, handcrafted box full of traditional clothing that belonged to my grandmother and her parents. She likes me to dress up in these, and as I do, she inevitably starts sharing life stories. It's like a trip down memory lane. Only that this time, I asked her to tell me more about the clothes I was wearing. Talk me through the embroidery techniques, the symbols and their meanings, the colors used. She had to explain why some designs were more elaborate than others, how long it took to create them, when and how she learned these techniques and this art. I realized that traditional dressmaking is an art that transcends aesthetics, and it would be a huge mistake for us millennials to ignore the source of knowledge. This was an amazing realization, but it only solved half of my puzzle. For the other half, and you maybe figured it out already, I would always be grateful to Adele, the singer. It was this picture of her wearing a traditional blouse designed by Tom Ford that looked very much like a traditional Romanian blouse that made me realize and convince me that my mission was to help artisans and traditional creative communities to promote their traditional designs and legally protect these traditional designs against misappropriation and unfair commercial exploitation. Now let me explain what exactly triggered this epiphany. When this picture was featured in Vogue, everyone was discussing the similarity to the Romanian blouse and was of the opinion that we should be honored that a designer like Tom Ford found inspiration in our culture. But I couldn't understand two things. Why didn't Tom Ford give proper credit to the Romanian culture as a source of inspiration? And secondly, how was it possible to commercialize a design that is so similar to an element of identity of a community and put a brand label on it? To me, it felt a bit like plagiarism, which is the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as your own. And since plagiarism is a crime under Romanian law, and in fact in any other jurisdiction, I couldn't understand why was there no national policy dealing with such behavior when it comes to traditional textiles design. That's when I joined the online community La Blouse Roumaine. La Blouse Roumaine invites people all over the world to celebrate the Universal Day of the Romanian Blouse every year on the 24th of June. With over 180,000 members on Facebook, this year, La Blouse Roumaine initiated the Give Credit campaign, asking contemporary designers to honor traditional design that inspires them. This call for cultural empathy had a ripple effect. People from all around the world joined this cause, and on June 24th, changed their profile picture with one in which they were wearing traditional clothing and a placard with the hashtag #GiveCredit. Give credit is the first step, but I believe it isn't enough. In the absence of any form of economic compensation for the source community, this is still cultural misappropriation, a form of intellectual theft. You might be thinking now, why is it such a big deal? At the end of the day, fashion has become, to a great extent, a copycat industry. Far from being just a trend, fashion inspired from traditional designs is present on the catwalk now every season. In the past 10 years, it has surpassed just inspiration status and has become predominantly exploitative. When I say exploitative, what I mean is that profits resulting from the sale of the copies of traditional designs returned exclusively to the fashion house. And the case of Tom Ford and the Romanian blouse is not singular. This Mexican blouse, pertaining to the Oaxaca community in Mexico, was misappropriated by French designer Isabelle Marant. So was this traditional shamanic Inuit parka copied without permission by a UK fashion label. In 2012, Louis Vuitton introduced in their Spring-Summer's men's collection designs inspired by the Masai Shuka. And this summer was prolific in stolen Romanian designs. Tory Burch introduced in her 2018 resort collection an identical copy of a 20th century Romanian coat. And my favorite example is the traditional Romanian sheepskin vest copied by Dior. Interestingly enough, the vest comes from Bihor County, which is the geographical region where I was born and where my family comes from. And interestingly enough, Bihor, Dior, they somehow rhyme. The fashion industry calls this inspiration from traditional design ethno-fashion or ethnic fashion. But there's a very fine line between finding inspiration and reinterpreting cultural symbolism and dilution of culture by losing track of the origin and the symbolism. The magic of traditional textiles designs is that they are bearers of a sacred language. Anthropologically, traditional garments and clothing tell the story of a community. They are representative of the identity of the community. They tell the story of the people who wear them and of those who made them. In legal terminology, these elements of traditional design are known as traditional cultural expressions or expressions of folklore. Unlike other creations of the mind, which are protected through intellectual property mechanisms such as copyright, trademarks, registered design, patents, traditional cultural expressions are not protected by law. Today, almost any good or service that is commercialized is protected by trademark, even a sound or a hologram. The appearance of a product, its shape, colors, patterns can be registered as a design, but not traditional cultural expressions. They are open source. This is not only a paradox, but a highly unjust situation. If we take European law, for example, we can conclude the following. Traditional design is not protected by law, so anyone is free to copy it. The designer can then commercially exploit the copied design, the misappropriated design, without restrictions. The copy is protected through the designer trademark, so hypothetically, the designer could take legal action against anyone who is copying the copied design. Do you think this is culturally sustainable? Your belief is extremely important because it will influence our tomorrow. This is not a topic for lawyers only. Personally, looking at the facts, I feel that the fashion industry is becoming the villain, and not in a Robin Hood style, taking from the rich and giving to the poor, but doing exactly the opposite. Some of the communities whose designs were copied went to court, but in all cases, success depends solely on the ingenuity of the lawyers, as there is no national or international framework designed to deal specifically with these cases. The World Intellectual Property Organization has been struggling for the past 20 years to reach an international agreement for the protection of traditional cultural expressions and expressions of folklore, but Western society in particular is hostile to the idea. So I realized there would not be enough time to wait for what I want to grow up doing to be created. I must contribute to creating it. But how to create law? This requires a paradigm change in the fashion industry. Start seeing the artisans as partners, not as competitors. What if a new mission of the fashion industry would be to save traditional craftsmanship, to prevent the loss of traditional cultural expressions and reduce or even eliminate culturally appropriated behavior? I call this the approach from the other side. Stop being the one that takes advantage and instead be the one that offers advantages. Valued today at almost $3 trillion, that is $3,000 billion, if fashion was a country, it would be the 5th richest economy in the world. This means there is money to invest. What we should aim for is fashion collections that promote culture and ensure the transmission of traditional knowledge from generation to generation. This concept can work both for the benefit of the fashion house as the initial investor and that of the local community, the provider of the know-how. Instead of the plagiarism scenario, imagine Isabel Marron had actually gone to the Oaxaca community in Mexico and together with the women artisans of the community had produced a new design inspired by the Mexican blouse, following a contemporary design and traditional craftsmanship. Today, the Marron ateliers would be ambassadors of Mexican embroidery techniques, and part of the profits would be redistributed to the community to be invested in facilities, cultural development opportunities, or any other thing based on the needs of the respective community. Imagine fashion titans such as Maison Dior, Valentino, Prada, Louis Vuitton, introducing in their business development plans a new line dedicated specifically to cultural fashion. Each such collection would be based on a collaboration with an artisan, a local community, a tribe. Traditional techniques would be documented and passed on to young artisans and designers. This would mean cultural and financial sustainability for a large number of traditional creative communities and a healthy direction for the fashion industry, which would become a vital partner in supporting the survival of these communities and their skill. The difference between cultural fashion and ethnic fashion is that ethnic fashion uses traditional design without the consent of the source community, whilst cultural fashion uses the participation of the source community in developing new designs that promote that culture. The good news is that a movement supporting artisan designer collaborations is taking contour. Many contemporary fashion startups truly embrace the concept of cultural fashion. An inspiring example is Indigo People, and I'm actually wearing one of their creations today. Indigo People was founded to support artisans that are losing their cultural heritage. They work with people from Asia, India, and they produce together contemporary design using traditional craftsmanship. Their business model is based on a benefit-sharing scheme that involves investment in the local community in the form of facilities and training opportunities. This benefit-sharing business model can be replicated on a larger scale. To build these bridges between the fashion industry and the artisans, we must act as mediators and help the communities of artisans organize. We must go out there where the know-how is and the skills are and prevent their loss. As lawyers and entrepreneurs, we have to create contracts and benefit-sharing schemes that ensure the fair distribution of intellectual property rights and cultural intellectual property rights. As crazy as this may sound, this is what I want to grow up doing. I hope you're asking yourselves now, why is this relevant to me? Let me show you something. This is a Romanian blouse, a very special gift I received on my 26th birthday. Take a moment to admire it. The embroidery speaks to you before you can read its language. It talks about life, about love and trust, about origin and belonging, about community, because it's at the heart and the soul of the community that it was born. I don't know where you come from, but no matter which corner of the world that is, I respect your cultural heritage, and so should you. Traditional textile designs are of extraordinary value. It's centuries of traditional knowledge, months, weeks, years, sometimes, of work, focus, and mindfulness embodied in these. Can you imagine the world of tomorrow without them? I don't want to. If we want to transmit this knowledge to future generations, we must find solutions, and here is where the fashion industry can act as our partner. But for that, it needs a reform. As a consumer, you have the power to reform the fashion industry and advocate for cultural sustainability by the choices you make and by the questions you ask. Changing the paradigm from competition to collaboration starts with you. Next time you have to make a choice between ethnic fashion and ethno-fashion, which one will you choose? Choose to care about what you wear, about how it's made, and what is the true cost of fashion. Rethink the way you look at traditional craftsmanship. You will understand its meaning. Respect textile cultural heritage. Whether you have an interest in fashion or not, traditional cultural expressions teach us about human creativity, about human values. They are symbols of individuality and belonging. And finally, next time someone asks you what you want to be when you grow up, start telling them about what you want to grow up doing. In my experience, this is way more challenging. Thank you.